So what's the worst job you ever had? Leave me some comments, guys. I know some of you have had some pretty bad ones. Now, whether they were dangerous physically, mentally, whatever, leave me some comments on that. I'll tell you my 5 worst. A little windy out here. Hope it doesn't get too bad. Here's number 1. Now, these are in no particular order, but they were all pretty bad. So the first one, when I was 16 years old, this was my second job. My first job was actually cleaning up a donut shop when I was 15. That was pretty bad. All kinds of grease on the floor from the donuts. Oh my God, it was pretty bad, but not as bad as one of these 5. So the first one, my job when I was 16 in the summer. I think that was between my freshman and sophomore year, I think so. I had to pack frozen squid. So in the morning, it wasn't too bad. We'd get there at 6 in the morning. The whole reason behind that is because you wanted to pack as many from the refrigerated truck, the semi-truck, into the warehouse when it was still cool out. And in the summer, where I lived, didn't get that hot, but it got hot enough. So in the morning, no big deal. We're packed up in our big galoshes and rubber overcoats, kind of like rubber overalls, to prevent the squid juice from getting all over you. So in the morning, it wasn't bad. We'd take these big pallets, break them down into like individual sections, pack them into the warehouse with our gloves and everything. But by the time noon came around and we still had another like 3 hours to work, a lot of those frozen squid were getting kind of slimy. And not just the slime. Okay, the slime was bad enough, but with squid, you've got that black ink. When it was frozen, no big deal. It was like a squid popsicle, all right? But when it started to get warm, that black ink would get all over you. No matter how well wrapped up you were, at the end of the day, you take everything off, you got squid ink all over, and it stunk. Oh my God, it was bad. It was like Limburger cheese, let's say. It was absolutely horrendous. So I would come home at the end of the day and my mom is just like, I'm like, Mom, you wanted me to get a job. I got a job. So she like, okay, you're right. But every single day, man, for that whole summer, I couldn't get the stink of the squid ink off me. Awful. Number 2, this was the next summer when I was 17. We had to put roofs on greenhouses, okay? So you guys know greenhouses, right? They grow plants in there. And again, it was something where we had to get there early in the morning to avoid the heat. Yeah, you did it too? My Ravens, they'd done everything. You had to get there before the heat of the day. So we would start again about 6 in the morning. All right, get up on top of these greenhouses, which were usually like about 10 to 15 feet above the ground. And it was plastic sheeting that we would put across the top of the greenhouses. Okay, bad enough, right? You're out there all day long in the sun. In the morning, not too bad. But toward the end of the day, you're just covered. Your body is just soaked in sweat. That wasn't the bad part. The bad part was that I had a boss who was probably 65, just crusty, okay? And the other worker there was probably 2 years older than me, but he was a bully. He was a Chicano gang member. Okay, he was maybe 18, 19, and this was before tattoos were big. He had tats all over him, and he would bully me all day long when the older supervisor wasn't looking. Like, no, man, you're not putting that right. You're not doing it right here. Do it over again. But then he would turn into the nicest guy in the world at lunch. He would say, come on, let's go back. Let's listen to some Santana. Like, okay. So for our half an hour lunch, greatest guy in the world. And then boom, right when we went back, he'd be pushing me, literally pushing me. I don't know if he was trying to push me off the roof. I never fell, but there were a couple times you're walking those girders, trying to put the plastic sheeting on. And on top of that, the management, there was some weird sexual stuff going on there. The management at the place, every day at lunch, they would disappear for an hour. We found out later they were doing some kinky things in the break room at lunch, which we weren't allowed into because we were the outside workers. So it was just a whole, luckily it was only a summer job, but man, at the end of that summer, I was just exhausted. Hey, if you guys are seeing me for the first time, my name is Duane. This is a retirement channel for people on moderate income. If you think you might like that, think about subscribing and like the video as well. Number 3. Now, my 20-year career in the music industry, 90% of the time was awesome. Absolutely awesome. Couldn't have asked for a better environment, better job. I loved it. But when I started, I was an assistant in publicity. Crazy department, man. Phones ringing off the hook all day long. Okay? So about 6-8 months into it, I was still an assistant. But I was an assistant for the vice president. The girl that sat right next to me, literally about 10 feet away on her own little desk, no cubicles, just out in the open desks, was the assistant for the senior vice president. Okay, so she had priority over me. Got along with her great. She went to get another job, another girl came in. The first month was fine. I was training her, everything was fine. And then for some reason, I don't know what it was. I think she might have been attracted to me. I had it going on back then. She might have been. That's just my guess. But she was asking me to do stuff, go to lunch, do this, do that. I would always say no. So she turned into like the biggest raving lunatic at work. We had to like back up each other's phones. When the phone started ringing for her boss, she would just be sitting in her chair, let it go to me. So I had like 5 people on hold. I've got more calls coming in. She wasn't helping. She wasn't helping at all. And then while I was doing my stuff, she would sit there in a low voice so only I could hear it saying, "You're an idiot. You don't know what you're doing. God, look at you." And literally this would go on all day long. I couldn't do anything about it because she was hired. I think her mother was a friend of the senior vice president who hired her. Couldn't do anything. So I had to sit and listen to this abuse all day long. The couple times that I tried to come back at her, nothing. Didn't do anything. Here came the words again. "You think you're so good, don't you? Just look at you. Look at you all dressed up and just, oh my God, you're the best assistant in the world." Man, that was a long 6 months until finally she got fired. Yes, there's justice in the world. Number 4. Come on, Win, I'm almost done, man. I was at a grocery chain. This was about 8-9 years ago. I would do all my work. It was an analytical job. I would get all my analytics out of the way in the morning and early afternoon till I thought I was done. Wasn't even my boss, but this guy had seniority over me. He would go in after I was done at the end of the day, redo all my work. Redo it all the stuff I spent 6 hours a day doing. He didn't like me for some reason, but he had the backing of my boss, who was the vice president, because they had worked together for 20 years. So I would get called in once or twice a week saying, "What's up with this? Why did you do this? What's this?" The guy was changing my work after I was done, sometimes after I went home for the day. Eventually, after, I don't know, it wasn't that long, 3-4 months, and it was hell, man. I had trouble sleeping, everything, because it's like, I didn't know what to do. I tried to complain to my boss once, and he just goes, "Oh, that's just Steve, man. He's just doing his thing." Okay. So eventually it came to a head. I was tired of it. I went into my boss's office. I started just yelling. And that's not me. Complaining to his friend who was changing all my stuff. He drug him into the office, confronted him. He said, "Yes, I was," and he claimed it's because I don't know what I'm doing. Not good. Not good. It was a terrible work environment. Again, had trouble sleeping all the time from that. Eventually it got smoothed out because I moved over into another department. But that, whatever it was, 3, 4, 5 months was hell. You talk about a toxic work environment. And number 5, this was another grocery chain I was working at. Both of these last ones are after my music career. This one, I was being trained by a girl who spent about 2-3 days training me on her department. I was going to take over her department when she eventually left in 6 months. Okay, so you can ease into it. All right, you know what you're doing. But she tells me she's leaving at the end of the week. My boss didn't know she was going to do that. I didn't know. I thought I had a good 6-month runway, or let's say 3 months. So what happens? It all came down on me. And here's the kicker. This was only in the first week. Okay, so already I'm like this. I have no idea what I'm doing, and my boss expects me to know what I'm doing after 3 days training. No idea. I'd never worked for this grocery chain before, never worked with this kind of product before. The kicker, the second week, someone else quits on another department. All that work gets put over on me. My boss has no sympathy. He's like, hey, this is what we hired you for. This is why we paid you the big bucks. And by any means, it was not big bucks, okay? So it was all put on me. I tried to do it for 3 days, and I was a wreck. My boss had no sympathy at all. He was saying, if you don't get up to speed on this quick, you're fired. And at first, I was panicking because I had no other job lined up. Finally, thankfully, at the end of the second week, I had another job lined up and I quit. I went to the boss, tell him I quit. What? Why are you quitting? What happened? Weren't we supportive of you? Weren't we, didn't we help you develop? I'm like, no. I came in here with one expectation. You expected something else. You expected me to do the work of 3 people. I can't do it. I've only been here 10 days. So I quit. So that was only 2 weeks. Hell, man. Hell. Absolute hell. So guys, tell me, what was your worst job? I'm sure a lot worse than mine. But just remember, as always, in retirement, we don't have to worry about that anymore. We're retired. We got this.